So let me just make sure that we're all set up. Okay, I want to talk to you a little bit today about our characteristics of life. And I have this little picture of a green man that you'll see hanging on the front board in my classroom, and we call him Mr. OHGRE, and he is going to help us remember these characteristics of life. So here is Mr. OHGRE. He's kind of a sickly looking guy, but he's green. His name sounds almost like green, so that's where the picture came from. So we've talked a little bit about intro biology. We've talked some about, or we will be talking some about scientific methodology, what is research, and we're going to start our own little project sometime soon. But because we're talking about biology, I want you to understand that there are specific characteristics that will let you determine if something is alive or not. And I'll give you another example at the end. But we're going to use his name to represent these 7 characteristics. So here they are: metabolism, reproduce, order, homeostasis, grow and develop, respond, and evolve. And we're going to go through each one of these. So the M, you'll see that I have underlined the letter and what it stands for. So M stands for metabolism. If you are alive, then you have to metabolize. You have to obtain materials for energy. We do that by eating. Plants do that by capturing sunlight, creating their own sugars, called photosynthesis. The R stands for reproduce. So if you are alive, you have to reproduce to make more of whatever organism you are. So there are 2 main types of reproduction. One is asexual. This is when a single organism can reproduce on its own. It just splits its cells. Bacteria is a good example of this. Second is sexual reproduction. This requires 2 cells from 2 different organisms to produce a new cell, and that in turn will create a new organism. This is what humans and other animals tend to do. O stands for order, and you can't, let's move me over here. Okay, order. All living things are made of cells. They have a specific order. Cells are the most basic unit of life. It's the most basic unit of an organism. Organisms can either be unicellular, which means they're made of only one cell, or multicellular, which means that they are composed of many different cells. And when there's a whole bunch of different cells, it allows for specialization. So inside of each of our cells, there are specific organelles, these little tiny pieces, kind of like parts in a factory that help them work. We have different cells for different purposes: skin cells, heart cells, hair cells, bladder, nails. They all have a different function. All living things are based on a universal genetic code. This is DNA. DNA has the same pieces. They're just arranged differently, the pieces are, and that's what makes all of us different. And then we have this little chain here. This is levels of organization as well. So the most basic part is a cell. Cells put together make tissues. Tissues make organs. Organs make organ systems, and all of that makes organisms. Next is homeostasis. So homeostasis is basically balance. We have to maintain a balanced internal environment to survive. Homeostasis is the process where we respond to specific stimuli to maintain that balance. So for example, if it's really cold outside, you shiver. That shivering produces energy, which is heat, and it helps you warm back up. Same thing with sweating in the summertime. You sweat to cool yourself off. All things have to grow and develop. Growth is going to happen by cell division. When cells get too big, they split and they continue growing in that way. Development is the changes on your way to adulthood. Development can also mean cell repair and replacement. Our cells get hurt and they die all the time. They're constantly being replaced, and sometimes they have to be fixed too, and our body is really good at doing that. We respond to our environment. So let's use an example of a bear. So first there's a stimulus. A stimulus is any condition that requires an organism to adjust. Let's use an example of the season right before hibernation. So bear realize that winter is coming, they need to eat a whole bunch, and they need to find a den and prepare to go into hibernation. Next is, so that season will be the stimulus. Next is their response. The reaction to the stimulus is going to be that that bear is going to start searching for a den. It needs somewhere to sleep. The behavior of the bear, this is going to be a complex set of reactions that's going to increase its chances of survival. That's going to be finding a den in addition to finding food to fatten up, basically, so that it has fat to live off of during the hibernation period when it's not going out and eating. Finally, we have to change or evolve over time, and this is done through adaptations. Adaptations are small little changes that an organism makes that makes it better suited to its environment. Now, I know that we kind of just ran through these 7 characteristics, but we're going to spend more time on each of these through the different units this year. These 7 characteristics can be used to determine if something is alive or not. So, an example that you have probably heard a lot about lately is a virus. And we're going to talk about this some when we get into cells, but viruses, when compared with the 7 characteristics of life, can be considered not to be alive, and that's because they cannot reproduce on their own. A virus has to have a host to reproduce. It has to have something to reproduce inside. It can't do it by itself, so therefore a virus is not considered to be alive. Now, during this section, we are doing sticky notes in the book. You're not going to really see me talking over a PowerPoint like this yet because we are looking at sticky notes. So if you want to add one in your biology book, I just put one if you want to keep up with the others. This is on page 13. Oh, there we go. All I did was list them out. Okay? That is all. Laters, guys.